Shalom, family. Peace be with you. You know, I've been looking over the YouTube and looking at some very, very interesting videos that a lot of you friends have been doing, great researchers out there. And I've been noticing this one image here called the relief of Lachish that I want to do a video about right now. I want to do I did some research on it so I could understand it myself what this is talking about. And again, this is called the relief of Lachish. Lachish was a Jewish city in the territory of the tribe of Judah. And in the year 713 BCE, the king of Assyria under King Sennacherib, that is who you're looking at here. This is a relief or an artistic art piece made of what happened, of the battle that took place there. The king Sennacherib under Assyria, he was a world power. He decided he wanted to go capture the tribe of Judah in that year, 713 BCE. And he mainly wanted to get Jerusalem. His eyes were on Jerusalem. He wasn't able to get Jerusalem, but he got several other cities. And this was one of them, the city of Lachish, and also the city of Libnah, which was a Judean city that belonged to the sons of Aaron. And so this was discovered between the years 1845 and 1851. There were two archaeologists that went down there and looked this up. One of them was Austin Henry Layard. Another one was named Henry Rawlinson. And so they went in and discovered these in the royal palace. So let's talk about this. This is very, very interesting. You can Google this. You can see I went to Wikipedia. That's one of my sources. And I looked this up. And so I was able to find this information. Also, Austin Henry Layard, he wrote a book called Discoveries Among the Ruins of Nineveh and Babylon. He wrote this book in the year 1853. Here is my resource, Internet Archive, archive.org. Also, Colonel Rawlinson wrote another book about it as well, called The Outline of the History of Assyria, discovered by Austin Henry Layard. So he does give him credit for the fact that he did discover it, but he wanted to do a book as well, this Lieutenant Colonel Rawlinson, and he did his book in the year 1852, excuse me. So we'll talk a little bit about what Rawlinson had to say in a minute here. But getting back to this image here, let's notice what was written about this in 1881. There was a Bible publication called The Expositor. It ran from 1870s up until 1920s. And there was one article that was written in 1881 that we want to take a look at. We want to go to Series 2, and here is my source, biblicalstudies.org.uk. And the name of it is The Expositor. You could Google this up. So we want to go down to volume 2, 2.6. There's volume 2 here. We want to go to 2.6 and look at this article that was written about this military battle trying to capture the tribe of Judah in 713. It was written by this gentleman here by the name of Edward H. Plumtree. He wrote this in 1881, and this is public domain. And this is the name of the article that he wrote: Assyrian and Babylonian inscriptions in their bearing of the Old Testament scriptures. We want to take a look at page 448, what he had to say about this relief here. So page 448, Assyrian and Babylonian inscriptions. Notice what he says here. He's talking about the whole series of facts as well illustrated by a bas relief from Sennacherib's palace there, now in the British Museum. He goes on, he says, the king is seated on his throne, receiving the homage of captives, and over his head is the inscription, Sennacherib, king of the nations, king of Assyria, sat on his lofty throne. He says, the spoil of Lachish before him came. So this was a, let me give you another picture of it here. This was the, this is the procession that was going before the king. And you see here his captives that he had captured. Here's the Assyrian soldiers behind the Jewish captives, the Judean captives that were taken, and they just did a procession before the king, showing off in great pride that they had struck and captured captives from the tribe of Judah. But they were not able to get Jerusalem. Of course, Sennacherib didn't acknowledge that, because one angel destroyed 185,000 of his soldiers, struck them down in one night. You could read that in the account of 2 Kings chapter 18, verse 13, 35, and chapter 19, verse 8 and 9 and 35 there, that one angel destroyed 185,000 of his troops. And so they were not able to get Hezekiah and the kingdom of Jerusalem, but they were able to get these others. So notice what, again, let's go back to page 448, what he goes on to say about these captives. He says, the spoil of Lachish came before him. Then he goes, this writer who wrote this, plum tree, notice what he says. He says, it is significant that the captives are, for the most part, representative as having woolly hair, as though they had belonged to the Ethiopian army of Tarhaka. Remember, I said that as they were on their way down to Jerusalem, this Ethiopian soldiers came and wanted to fight with them. They wanted to battle with them as they were on their way down to Jerusalem. And these were these Ethiopian soldiers that were under the Cushite king Tarhaka. He was a Cushite, and he was able to sit on the throne of Pharaoh there. I believe they were the 24th dynasty of the pharaohs in Egypt there. When Cush came to power under Tarhaka. So they wanted to fight the Assyrian troops there. And so it's interesting that this man who wrote this piece in this Bible publication back in 1881, he seems to make the assumption that these captives who had the woolly hair, that they must not have been Jewish people. They must have been captives of the Ethiopian army, because they had woolly hair. And so apparently the concept of being black Hebrew Jews apparently was not, it was a little bit too far-fetched to wrap their brains and their minds around in 1881. So they had to have been the captives of the Egyptians. They couldn't have been Judeans. But let's go to Rawlinson's book here. Let's go to Rawlinson's book here, The Outline of the History of Assyria. Notice what he had to say that debunks that theory. Here on page 23 and 24 of his book here, he goes on to say here, the nobles and the people of Ekron, having expelled their king Hidiah and the Assyrian troops who garrisoned the town, attached themselves to Hezekiah of Judea. Remember, they wanted to capture Jerusalem, and they paid their adoration to his God. The name is lost. Of course, we know the name is Jehovah. He says, the kings of Egypt also sent horsemen and footmen belonging to the army of the king of Meroe, or Ethiopia, of which the numbers could not be counted. He goes on to say, the captains of the cohorts and the young men of the kings of Egypt and the captains of the cohorts of the king of Meroe I put to the sword in the country of Libnah. That was the Jewish city that was given to the sons of Aaron. They belonged to the sons of Aaron, that city, Libnah. So these Egyptian soldiers that wanted to attack Assyria, they were put to death, he says. He said, I put them to the sword in the country of Libnah. Now we go to page 24. He talks about this again. He says, in the 14th year of Hezekiah's reign, or BC 713, Sennacherib, having reduced the other cities of the seacoast, turns his arms against Ekron, which was still held by the king of Judah. But notice what he goes on to say. He says he turned back accordingly to Lachish to engage with them, to engage with the Egyptians and the Ethiopians under Tarhaka, the king of Meroe. And then notice what he says here. From Lachish, Sennacherib proceeded to Libnah, where he executed his Egyptian prisoners. So these Egyptian prisoners were executed. So they were not taken on the procession to Assyria before the king when he was sitting on his throne. Those Egyptian and Ethiopian soldiers were put to death. And so you can look that up on page 23 and 24 in Rawlinson's book, The History of Assyria. But now, let's go back to another thought. There's two more interesting facts that we can learn from the relief of Lachish that helps us appreciate that without question, we can conclude that the captives with the woolly hair were indeed black Hebrew Jews. And so let's show that with you here as well. And you can see the woolly hair. You can see that's swarthy. That's Negroid hair, African hair. These are Jews, Judean, captured from the city of Lachish, a Judean city in the territory of Judah. So the artisans wanted to create this relief that they wanted to hang in the royal palace before King Sennacherib so that he could boast and let everyone know that this had occurred, that he had captured Judeans. And so these artisans who were drawing this, chiseling this, it had to be accurate, it had to be in detail. And so let's get another picture of it here as well. See, here we go. Let's get another. I keep getting the same one up here. Let's get this one here. Yeah, here we go. So here's the king, and here's the captives right before him. So here's a point to think about. Why would the artisans want to put as the very first image that they chiseled, here's the king. Why would they put the very first image of captives from some other country? Their eyes was on Jerusalem and on the tribe of Judah. So that is what the artisans drew and chiseled into their art piece, was these captives that had been taken. These were Jewish captives. And as you can see, their hair is African, and that is what Plumtree wrote in his piece in the expositor, that they had woolly hair. So there's no doubt about that. And other sources prove that as well. They say that as well. And then we can even go to the book written by Sir Henry Layard and see what he had to say about the book. Here on page 129 in his book, notice what he says. He says, the captives were undoubtedly Jews. They were undoubtedly Jews. Their physiognomy was strikingly indicated in the sculptures. But they had been stripped of their ornaments and their fine raiment and were left barefooted and half clothed. So he says the captives were undoubtedly Jews. So, do you believe the knowledge that's been revealed here, family? If we believe